Hello and welcome back to Genshin Impact. My name's Felt, and today we're going to be talking about this wonderful unit on your screen right here, Kazuha. Why are you... This is the second time he's interrupted my intro. Second time. Man just loves to talk. But yeah, we're talking about Kazuha today, and why I think he isn't what a lot of people call him, aka budget venti slash budget sucrose slash better anemo traveler, when I think he fills a niche all his own. Let's get racking. Okay, let's start by talking about his talents and his ascension passives. His talents, skills, attention. It's all under the talents banner. Cut me some slack. Alright. He attacks with a sword. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty decent scaling. If I recall correctly, his charged attack is pretty alright. The second hit is the most important one, obviously. Chihaya, which is probably the most important skill for you to level. I recommend leveling this above everything else because it's going to be the majority of your damage. You pull in enemies around you, and you slam down onto the ground with a plunging attack afterwards, which you do have to do yourself. And it pulls everything in a small AoE. We can even demonstrate that right now. You jump, you slam down, they'll all be pulled into that little AoE right there. But it has two modes to it. First is just the tap like I did, and then second is the hold, which does more damage, draws them in from further away, and has a longer cooldown. Pretty straightforward, but I highly recommend you doing this first, as this will be the majority of your damage. And it's your way of grouping up units best, and it'll be swirling them for the most, once again, amount of damage. Which, I don't know if you knew this about Genshin, but damage is kind of king in this game. Killing stuff faster, no matter what, is always better. So I highly recommend you level up Chihaya first. Next is his Kazuha Slash, which is his burst. I don't have the energy right now to show it off, but it'll be fine. You'll see it in the gameplay later. It is a gigantic, and I do mean gigantic AoE, that does a massive amount of damage over time. It lasts for 8 seconds, ticking like every other second. That's 420% of his damage to start, 200% dot. Keep in mind this is level 8 skill, so this is a high investment Kazuha here. But it's still wonderful. It's still the thing I recommend you doing second. Unless you were doing a main DPS Kazuha, in which case I recommend you level it evenly with his normal attacks. It's kind of hard to say use main DPS Kazuha because he just shines so well as a support, but you can do it if you want to. I've considered it sometimes because he's such a fun unit to play. Let's talk about Summon Swordsmanship. If Chihaya comes into contact with Hydropyrocar Electro when cast, it will absorb that element, and if the plunging attack is used before it expires, it deals 200% the absorbed elemental type as damage, which adds into the level Chihaya first because it does more damage, and it does more damage. Which, by the way, because of all of that, you will be triggering the Viridescent Venerer 4-piece, which is wonderful for using him supportively. Let's talk about his most important thing, his level 60 Ascension passive, Poetics of Fubutsu. Upon triggering a swirl, you will grant the party members a 0.04% elemental damage bonus to the absorbed element for every point of elemental mastery he has. And he can trigger it multiple ways, multiple times, and it is just for swirling. So if you're swirling one thing with your Kazuha Slash, and then you swirl a different thing with Chihaya, you can be boosting both Hydro and Pyro simultaneously. It's wonderful. Since this scales off your elemental mastery, which just recently got a buff for Anemo, swirl damage, you will be doing a metric crap ton of damage because of the elemental mastery, on top of the fact that you are now buffing your party. I believe currently I'm getting a 20% damage buff to my party with this 600 elemental mastery, as well as decreasing their elemental res by 40%. So effectively, it's a net 60% change from one unit, which is insane. And it is different from Sucrose. You see, let's go look at Sucrose's talent here. Sucrose's talent is that when something's hit by her abilities and swirled, the elemental mastery is 20% of Sucrose's. It increases their elemental mastery. Elemental mastery is a different stat from elemental damage. You will buff the percentage here of their Hydro or their Pyro, meaning someone like Child can go from 80% Hydro to 100% Hydro damage in place of just boosting his elemental mastery, which is something you don't even generally go for on Child. Or the same for Xiangling, although elemental mastery is a bit better on her because she's the one who's doing the vaporizing. Same for Bennett. Alright, we were talking about talents and how to level them, now let's go straight into artifacts. Might be like, what do you mean go straight into artifacts? He's an anemo user who swirls. Give him Viridescent Venerer 4-piece and be done. Well, yes, that is a higher investment though. It is hard to get 4-piece Viridescent Venerer that has all the stats you want. Especially someone who wants something specifically like Elemental Mastery. On my free-to-play account, I don't even have Elemental Mastery high enough to give him to make him better, so I just give him like attack stuff. Personally, I believe the best 4-piece for him, by far, is the Viridescent Venerer. But you have options. You have tons of options. And by tons of options, I mean you can use the Noblesse Oblige set. The Elemental Burst damage is really nice. It's not the same, but it is a different way of using him, and I believe that because he's such a powerful support / sub-DPS, the 4-piece Noblesse Oblige can run really well on him. Another one that can work really well on him, but is much more difficult to farm, is the Wanderer's Troop. Now the 4-piece set, kind of completely useless. He doesn't have a Catalyst or a bow, don't even bother trying. The 2-piece, though, is 80 free Elemental Mastery. And when your Elemental Mastery pieces give 187 on their own, you gotta realize, 80 Elemental Mastery is not to be scoffed at. His weapon's giving 165 at max level. That's half of your weapon. You can add an extra 50% of your weapon's Elemental Mastery to your stats by using that 2-piece. Now, like I said, you won't have a 4-piece Venerer, so you won't be reducing damage, but you will be buffing damage even more than you would be otherwise. So it is an option. If you've gotten insanely unlucky with a Viridescent Venerer, but you have, like I do, a pretty decent Conductor's top hat with Elemental Mastery on it, and then you got like a Sands of Elemental Mastery from the Viridescent Venerer set, you can just rock that 2-piece, rock out a 2-piece of the Venerer, I can go to town. It's great. As for stats on the artifacts, that's a very long conversation, but I'll try and shorten it down as much as I can. If you're running him purely supportive, don't want him to really do damage, you want him to be a buff bot, all Elemental Mastery. Elemental Mastery Sands, Goblet, and Circlet, all 3. If you're trying to make him do a little more damage, I first recommend starting with turning his Goblet to an anemo damage Goblet. It's the fastest way to make him personally do more damage, is to swap that from Elemental Mastery to anemo damage. Although, because of the recent buffs, the way that it works out is they're about even, but it all depends. This just makes him do straight up more anemo damage, even if he's not swirling something. Although most of the time he will be, it's still a definite case of, just in case he's not swirling something, you will be doing straight up more anemo damage. You can swap the Sands to an attack Sands in this exact same scenario. And you can swap the Circlet to a crit rate or crit damage Circlet, depending on what weapon you're using as well. Okay, let's talk about weapons for Kazuha now. You're seeing on screen what I consider to be the best weapon for him. It has a massive amount of Elemental Mastery, it has one of the highest base attacks in the game, being a 5-star, and this giant wall of text basically says, do more damage with Kazuha. It's literally his personal weapon. It's great for him. Highly recommended. If you have this for him, give it to him. If you have this for him, though, I'm sure you're already using it on him, but it's more of a, if it comes back later on in the game's life cycle, you can go ahead and try and roll for it again and give it to him then. There is actually another great weapon on this banner, though, the Alley Flash. As you can see, it has a lot less Elemental Mastery, but it is still an Elemental Mastery substat weapon, with a decent refined passive and decent base attack. So it's another option of 4-star weapon, Elemental Mastery, secondary stat, or good to go. We have 2 more Elemental Mastery weapons in the game, and I'm not joking, there's only 4 of them right now. Trust me, I checked. Iron Sting, which is what I used. I happen to already have mine at Refinement Rank 2 because of some builds I was messing around on, so I just went ahead and capped it out and threw it on Kazuha. It's wonderful for him. Increases all damage by 7.5% if he deals elemental damage, and most of his damage is elemental damage. The last Elemental Mastery weapon is actually the Dark Iron Sword, and as you can see, it actually has more Elemental Mastery than the Alley Flash. And it has a unique refinement passive, with Electrocharge infusions, basically, where if you're using it as a support for Electro, this will be boosting attack by a decent amount. I don't know if this applies to the party or not, but at minimum, it'll apply to him. So you can swirl with your skill and then pop your burst, and your burst will at least have that 20% damage boost, which is really nice. In terms of other weapons, It's a classic case. You have a solid 4-star, throw it on him. Mastering Desire? Sure, why not? It's energy recharge and elemental mastery, but you can cast as burst more often, you know? Just make sure you're going into more elemental mastery on your artifacts. Black Sword, you're like, okay, let's use a bit more of a main DPS with that crit rate. Prototype Rancor, you're going to hit really hard because its base attack is so freaking high. And physical damage bonus is nice if you're leaving him out and attacking with him constantly. It's really more of a he's staying on the field attacking weapon than anything. If you really need energy recharge, you can use Favonius. Flute is a solid attack percent stat stick. Sack Sword is if you want to spam his burst abilities all the time. Burst and abilities all the time. And I want to make a case for the Lion's Roar. If you're using him with a team like the Fireworks team, the classic Fireworks comp of Beto, Fischl, and Child, because everything's going to be affected by Electro in that comp, technically speaking, that makes this a pretty solid weapon for him, but it's attack percent substat in place of an elemental mastery. So even though he's dealing more damage, he's giving the party less. So I still highly recommend that. Worst comes to worst, if you're having bad luck with getting a weapon from the bosses for the week, just go grab the Dark Iron Sword. So I switched my free-to-play account for this part of the video, as you can tell from the fact that I have a Dark Iron Sword equipped, and I'm a level 60 out of 70, Kazuha. The reason I did this is, one, to prove that I'm not full of crap with my free-to-play account, and that I do think he's great for free-to-play characters. I want to prove that this is my free-to-play account as well. I can go to the shop and go to the crystal top off, and you see everything still has its bonus. But yeah, no, I think Kazuha is great for free-to-play, and this is how I use him. I just have a random 4-piece Veritas Inventor, to the point where I don't even care about the circlet right now, because I just love the reduction on it, and I use the Dark Iron Sword, like I was talking about before, how I think it's a great option for him. Elemental Mastery main stat, it has a decent passive for him, and you don't have to even pull for it. The way you get it is you come over here and you talk to Chen the Sharp, interact with him, and you ask him how the fish are selling. Once you do that, he'll have an extra little dialogue option, if you haven't talked to him before, and he'll give you the Dark Iron Sword. The only downside is this currently cannot be refined, which is just sad. And yeah, that's generally all I have to say about Kazuha. The rest of this video is probably going to be gameplay of him in various ways that I've used him to the best of my abilities. I think he's a really powerful unit. I think he loves to talk a lot. And I think that he is not a straight-up Venti, Sucrose, Anemo Traveler clone. I think he fits in his own niche very well, and that you can build him differently enough that you can even use multiple of these units without having them overlap. Plus, he just looks awesome. Like, look at this visual design. Who wouldn't want that? Either way, thanks for watching and hanging out. The rest of the video is just going to be some gameplay. If you liked what you've seen so far, feel free to leave a like, comment if you think I got something wrong, and subscribe if you want to see more like this. Thanks for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next one.
知らん。逃げられるかな。くらえ風よ。みんなは俺が前せい
師匠の技を食らいな。
雲が借りなくとや隙を見せるのはほんの一瞬。はっはっせいた
5番。
くらえ風を知れ。せいはっ全力攻撃。はっはっはっ違う。散らま燃えろ。
食らってみたいのか。重い拳を
燃えろ。風のそれはっ
料理の時間だ。
くらえみんながそばにいる。はっ風の湯はっ
話が通じないなら叩くも。
風の歌雲の湯止水の矢よっ前それ燃えろ。はっみんなは俺が守る。燃えろ風よ。はっはっもみちが散らま燃えろ前よよしくらえ痛いから我慢しろよ。みんながそばにいてはっはっやっ風の歌雲の行くごと風をそれそこだ。ほっはっはっはっふん全力攻撃だ。